evening, all my awesome, fun friends here on YouTube. Welcome to Mike the Naked Bigfoot's channel. Happy to have everybody here with me tonight, as always. If you don't currently subscribe, I please ask you to just take a moment and click the subscription, and perhaps if you enjoy what you see, perhaps like it. If you don't like it, not going to offend by hitting dislike. Hey, it just helps me improve for my next episode. But before we get started on tonight's episode, there's a few disclaimers I have to get out of the way. Number one, the views and opinions expressed by your host tonight. Hey, Papa Joey. By the way, for those who are new to seeing me live or seeing my channel period or ever seeing me being interviewed will know that I am stream of consciousness. It's my ADHD kicks in. I'm all over the place. But the views and opinions of your humble host, Mike the Naked Bigfoot, are exclusively his own. Be warned, especially tonight. Hey, super horror, whoop whoop. Especially tonight, I want to really put out an advisory. I will be talking about some of the things I'll be talking about will be rather graphic and bloody, dealing with cannibalism and such. I also have a habit of cussing every other word. So if you have any children in the room or you're faint of heart, I please advise you, as soon as you hear me go into one of my rants, to please turn down the volume, mute it, or ask the little ones to leave the room. Like I said, tonight's episode might be just a little graphic. So some of the details I'll be sharing with everybody. And with that, let's get on with the show. Well, tonight's topic was something that I've really wanted to talk about for quite some time. Back in the early days of the Naked Bigfoot's life. Damn it, ADHD. In the Naked Bigfoot's life, when he left his quaint mountain abode here in the Blue Ridge Mountains as a nascent young man, I went forth to discover myself, and both in the actual sense of who I was and the spiritual and metaphysical sense of why was I here, what was my purpose, so on and so forth. And during the course of my travels here across the United States and Mexico and Canada and a few islands, I ran across something that had always intrigued me even when I was a wee lad in the mountains. And that was the topic of werewolves. Now, tonight's discussion, we're not going to be talking about, let me start it off this way. There are a lot of movies and a lot of stories, fictional stories, and a lot of movies, horror movies, that are made on the things that scare us the most, that intrigue us the most. One being vampires, another being zombies, especially recently. Zombies have really been a big topic. But one thing in particular, I think there's more movies made on werewolves than anything else, and more stories written about werewolves than anything else. And the traditional werewolf, there's very little originality to it. It's a Hollywoodized version of a man that becomes a man, and in some cases a woman, who would become a wolf when the moon grew fat. Full moon, that is. And he would go forth and kill and ravage the land and kill people. And before he became human again, and he was a tortured spirit, and the only way to put him down was with a silver bullet. But believe it or not, the truth about werewolves is much, much more interesting and much more fascinating than what any movie could hope to conceive of. Now, in my travels, especially in the South, um, it was hard to tell fact from fiction, folklore from legend and myth. And then I started finding consistencies in some of the stories and some of the encounters that I had. And I started doing my own research. And in doing so, and pulling all these stories together, mostly traveling through Mississippi, Louisiana, southern Texas, northern Arizona, Colorado, and Montana, and Washington State, especially, I was able to come to the conclusion that there are three, and I'm gonna use the word werewolf in quotation marks from here on out, so everybody can follow along. But I found out that I discovered that there are three main types of creatures, of entities, of people um, that fall into the category of werewolf. Now, we're not talking about therianthropes, and the therianthrope is a person or persons or spirit that can assume the shape of any animal, including another person, such as a mortal or divine skinwalker, which I'm going to do a show about eventually. Um, we're talking about someone who is a wolf, who is one way or another has the qualities of a wolf. But there are three main types of this particular creature that exists. I've actually been able to meet two of the types. The third type I never hope to meet, and I'll get to that later. Um, but I'll tell you the names, and then I'll tell you, a little bit of the history behind each one of them, and then share with you some of the experiences that I had with these creatures, these people. I want to call them creatures instead of people. Um, Most people I know are vanilla. They have not been touched by the supernatural. I believe that once you've been touched by the supernatural, you're pretty much begin to step away from the realm of humanity and you start becoming something else. So I'm going to use the word creature tonight because these have all been touched by the supernatural and the paranormal a lot. Like I said, three distinct, um, let's call them branches of werewolf. There is the lycanthrope. There is the Lougarou, and that's a French term, Loupgarou. And then there is the Hex and Wolf, which means, translated from Germanic, Old Germanic, means spell wolf, just the way it sounds, spell wolf. But let's start with lycanthrope. Lycanthropy is actually considered in psychiatric circles as a mental disease, as a mental disorder of people who believe that they can turn into or acquire the traits of a wolf. And they believe they can turn into that. Oh God, I'm trying not to read comments so I can stay on track tonight. I'm actually trying to be serious for a change. Fuck. Whoops, here's the first bad word for the evening. The lycanthrope, like I said, it was considered a mental disorder where people believed that they could turn into wolves and they acted like wolves at the full moons. But the truth behind a lycanthrope is a little bit more terrifying than that. A lycanthrope is a person. They look like a normal human being, like me or you, a normal person. except for when they were conceived and born. Instead of receiving the soul or spirit of a human, they received the soul or spirit of a wolf. And this spirit grew like all our souls when we are born. Our spirits grow within us when we are born. Um, they grow as we grow. They mature as we mature. And the same is true with this spirit of the wild, this wolf spirit that they're born with. Before I go into a little bit more details, let me tell you the wolf spirit that was born within them, that is within them. Like I said, they stop time up as soon as they're born. They're not human. They are officially a lycanthrope. But this is not a curse. Um, this is not. Um, in a lot of circles, in a lot of cultures, especially American Indian cultures, um, and some of the Swedish cultures, and a few villages in Germany at the time that had lycanthropes that live within these groups, both here in the United States and overseas in these countries. Um, the lycanthrope was inherently not bad, um, but it could become bad. Usually, a person who was, and it could be a male or female, it could skip generations, but usually it followed bloodlines. It could skip whole generations. A lycanthrope could not be born um, maybe for 30 or 40 years, and then suddenly a member of the family gives birth to a lycanthrope. But as these lycanthropes begin to grow up, a casual observer can tell that there's something not quite right about the child, especially with the way it interacts with adults and how it interacts with other children that are not lycanthropes. Um, they're overly aggressive. Um, they're not loud. They're very, very quiet. They prefer to, and if anybody's ever met those creepy children who on a playground just stare at the other kids or stare at the adults, well, this is what a lycanthrope's doing. It's sizing up potential dangers or potential prey. I'll get into that in a second. Around it, whether it be another child or whether it be an adult, and God's forbid, whether it be their parent. Like I said, the lycanthrope by itself is not inherently evil. It's a spirit of the wild that now exists within this human shell. And it's going to become not a product of its nature, it's going to be nurtured, a product of nurturing by the parents in its environment. If you have parents that are abusive, that try to suppress the nature of the lycanthrope, that try to correct the child physically, abusively, um, it's just like how you would beat a wild animal, and if you had a wolf as a pet, if you beat the animal or a tiger as a pet, if you abused the animal every day, it would be wary of you. But eventually, as soon as you had your back turned or it saw the opportunity, it would turn on you and rip your throat out. Well, the same thing is true about lycanthropes, especially when they're children. Um, they take the abuse, internalize it, and they give it back. Usually violent towards other kids, vicious with adults that they don't know about. They are incredibly and sometimes scarily obedient to their family members because they see the man and the woman who is their mother and their father as the alphas of their clan, so they're going to obey them. They will test them, but they will always obey them at the end. But as these lycanthropes grow up, again, depending on how they were raised, depending on how they were treated, um, they can become very productive members of society. But that's only about 10% of them. The other 90% um, give in to the more, especially when they hit puberty and beyond, when they become sexually mature. Um, if you think about, again, like a cat or a wolf or a dog, when it becomes sexually mature, its entire attitude changes, its entire way it sees the world changes, the entire how it interacts with the world changes. Well, the truth that is true with the lycanthrope as well. And lycanthropes, once this aggressive nature overtakes them, it consumes them, I should say. It completely consumes them. And that's when the world starts to take notice. Um, some of our more interesting and more violent serial killers that are here in the United States were in fact lycanthropes themselves, acting on their instincts and going forth and hunting and killing people. They were acting on instinct. They were not acting out of a mental disorder. This is what they were. They gave in to the darker part of their nature for one reason or another, and they were compelled to act out on it. Um, um, yeah. When I say 90%, and that's usually the ones who are killers and become notorious killers or murderers or human monsters. But then there's a small percentage that actually they'll seek each other out and they'll form their own pack. They'll live together. They'll travel together. They'll breed together. Uh, they indulge in their basest of animal instincts, because you have to remember these are animals clothed to look like humans. They look like you and me, except for fundamentally they are not human. They have the spirit, and I have never been able to truly understand whether it was a natural wolf spirit or an otherworldly wolf spirit from the spirit realm. I was never able to believe it or not, I have a very good buddy who's a detective here in Virginia, with state police. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Who has identified several groups of lycanthropes that live here in that actually live in Southside Virginia. They happen to cook meth as well, but that's something different altogether. Where was I? Oh, there's a small group that will seek each other out and form their own groups and form their own packs. And they relish in not fitting into society. Usually, we see them as members of and being a part of and making up the entirety of gangs like biker gangs, inner city gangs, gangs in prisons of the ones that were arrested for various violent crimes. They will seek each other out. Yeah, they're party animals, all right. They will seek each other out and they will gather together in these groups and these packs, because they feel comfortable, they feel safe. They establish a pecking order in the pack, just like a wolf would in the wilderness. Um, they form packs. They have an alpha. They have an omega. Um, they do mate for life. Um, but they also can go from being kind to you 1 second, and when you turn your back on them, they will kill you, beat you to death, while the rest of the gang circles you and laughs and watches. Lycanthropes are terrifying. Um, I was in Shreveport in 1993, I believe. When I met my first, it was 5 of them. And they were bikers. Actually at a biker bar. I went by there. I was actually in Shreveport. Um, that's going to be a story by itself. Shreveport's it's a fascinating town if you've never been there. Pretty much any vice you can think of, you have access to it there. Well, I had felt brave and bold, and I went there to this bar, and I walked right into the middle of the biggest fucking bar fight I'd ever seen in my life. There's these 5 guys that had taken on another group of bikers. There were 15 of them, and they had beaten the ever living shit out of them. And the thing is, they were trying to get away from them as fast as possible. These other 15 guys, they were freaking huge. They were trying to get away from them as fast as possible. But these 5, these lycanthropes, were not having that. When they turned their tail and tried to get away from them, they saw weakness and they went after them. I had truly never seen so much blood in my life. And they didn't stop pounding on them and beating them and breaking them until they felt satisfaction, until they decided not to get off the ground and off the floor again. At the time, I didn't realize I was looking at a small pack of lycanthropes at the time. But I was there to visit a local, it was she's still a very good friend to this day. Her and her coven. I was there actually visiting a witch. Who practices an interesting form of carnal magic, and carnal spirituality. Yes, that's sex magic. If anybody's interested, I'll do a talk about sex magic. We'll call it the Naked Bigfoot After Dark episode. And I was letting Sheila know what I had seen the night before, and she told me, she said, oh, you're lucky they didn't pay you. You're lucky, really lucky you did not walk into the middle of that fight or walk through that fight or get their attention, because they were lycanthropes. And that's when she sat down and told me what I just explained to you guys, what a lycanthrope was. She said that pack had been in Shreveport for quite some time. When they left, they never stayed gone long. They would always come back because they considered that their home territory. Sorry, I have to pause to read the comments. Like I said, sex magic. That should be interesting one day. As she explained to me, most lycanthropes were nomadic when they were in groups. When they had a pack, they were nomadic, but they always had a home base they would always come back to in their travels as they went through. They would try to find other lycanthropes to join them and to ride with them and be a member of their pack. Because like wolves, a single lycanthrope by itself is very cautious, has a tendency to push down its basic instincts, its animal instincts down until the time is right for them to utilize them properly. But when you have a pack of them, they're more emboldened, and they're always wearing the mantle of that beast spirit on their shoulders and in their hearts. But that's how I found out what a lycanthrope was, which I found completely both terrifying and fascinating. And one of my favorite pastimes was always reading about serial killers and their motivations and such. And as I read about some of the serial killers that we had, especially some of the ones we've had here in the United States, it was hard not to believe that some of them were lycanthropes at the time. based on the brutality of their crimes and the animalistic nature of their crimes, um, and the techniques that they use to commit their crimes with. It's utterly and completely fascinating. We'll pause there for a second. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Going once. Lycanthrope's going twice. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's move on to one of the second type of werewolf that's out there. And that would be the Loup-garou, which is French, by the way. Loupgarou. Originated in France, but it was named Loup-garou in France, but it also appeared, again, most of these creatures started off as in European countries and around the Baltic areas, the Baltic countries, and believe it or not, around Switzerland and Norway as well. A lot of these werewolf creatures were. And as people began to emigrate to the United States and to the New World, so did the werewolves. They came with them over the ocean to the New World. Some of them seeking the wilds to be free. Some of them seeking cures. Some of them escaping before they were caught and killed. And that's in the case of the Loup-garou. Now, the Loup-garou is fascinating because it's the one that you can truly call a monster. A Loup-garou is a cursed human being. It's usually a male, but it can be a female as well. It's a blood curse in a family. At some point, a Loup-garou's, one of their ancestors, had been cursed. They had committed a crime that was so heinous to both man and to the gods that a curse was brought upon them to lose the form of man and become this ravening beast at certain times of the year. Now, unlike the werewolves that we see, a lot of the werewolf legends and a lot of the werewolf movies that we have seen and have watched, the Loup-garou does not necessarily, the person who is afflicted as a Loup-garou is not necessarily becomes the beast at a full moon. It's usually at more specific times of the year. And usually the legend of the full moon came into place because, say for instance, you were in the woods and you saw something become a werewolf and the moon was out and the moon was full. You assume that it became a wolf because the moon was full. I mean, that's how legends like that are born and how they're passed along for generations. But the Loup-garou is usually becomes a wolf. It's just not any wolf. It's what we consider something. Here's the word that I hate, but it's very accurate when it comes to this particular critter. A demon wolf, something that's as large as a bear, eyes that glow red like fire, blood and saliva dripping from its fangs, that sort of thing. But it doesn't walk on its hind legs. It actually becomes this giant wolf that walks on four legs, very large claws and a long tail and matted fur. But like I said, this critter is something, it's a blood curse. It's something that's in the blood of a family that's passed down from generation to generation. The bad thing is that the blood curse does not skip generations. There will always be one person in every generation that's afflicted with the curse of a Loup-garou. That's just how it is. So there'll always be one. Um, and there's no way to end the curse. There's no act of atonement that you can do for it. Oh, fuck. Yeah, I said demon. But I was using it as an adjective. God damn it. Using it as an adjective. We all know how I feel about demons. Demons don't exist. You're making me get off subject. Making me misbehave tonight. As I was saying, they don't turn on a full moon. It's a coincidence usually. They usually turn on days like days of the solstice, days of high feasts. The solstice, you name it, Samhain, Beltane, all the major Druidic holidays. It's whenever the powers in the air are strong enough to evoke this Rougarou monster to come forth in this person. And since we know that it's a blood curse, that it is a curse, it is a curse placed upon this person and their bloodline for eternity. The person who's afflicted, they know what they're doing when they go out and kill people, when they go out and shred animals in the woods, when they go out and eat people's dogs or eat people's sheep or eat people's cows. They know what they're doing. They wake up the next morning and they know every single detail of what they did. But there's absolutely nothing they can do to keep it from happening again. They know next time it'll happen. One of the funny things about a Rougarou is a Rougarou curse is they always and I think and I honestly believe it's part of the curse because I've never seen a Rougarou never not get married, or read that one never got married and had children. I think that's part of the curse. It's part of the impulse to go forth and breed, and so the curse doesn't die and it continues forth. So I think if somebody was aware that they were turning into this giant monster demon wolf, that they would just not get married and pass it along. But there's some impulse that forces them to do that. Now that's my supposition, my opinion on that. And if I wish I could be proved wrong, but I don't think I am wrong at all about when it comes to that. Now, let's talk about here in the United States, the Rougarou here in the U.S., because of course, these families, they moved, they had the cursed bloodline moved to the United States. Believe it or not, most of them settled either in Canada, believe it or not, Washington State, and Mississippi. Well, no, Louisiana and Mississippi. It's hard to tell the difference between those two states someday. So if anybody's from there, I'm sorry, but I lived a good part of my life down there, and there really isn't that much of a difference besides the size of the mosquitoes. But that's a tale for another day. But in the South, and in the bayous, and in the Creole legends, which of course, French descendancy, and again, that's the area that's well known for its curse of the Rougarou. Actually, many stories coming from old during the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages in France over the beasts that would ravage the lands there. They were thought to be Rougarou, and noble family men that were out, and the family was cursed, and that member of the family was out eating children and puppies too. But here in the South, United States, there is the legend of the Rougarou. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Rougarou. What I'm about to say is going to piss off an entire bunch of people, so here we go. They're the same thing. It's just called a Rougarou because it got started and got called that because there's a lot of uneducated people who had really bad accents or no teeth that mispronounced the word Lou into Roo, and they just called it a Rougarou because it was easier to say than Lougarou. But they're the same damn thing. My thing was just get some teeth and you'll be able to pronounce it right, but that never happened. I know, I'm being an asshole. Fuck it. It's my show. I'm allowed to be an asshole on occasion. Okay. There are many stories of the Rougarou, and the Rougarou here in the South, in the bayous, in Louisiana and Mississippi. The Rougarou is a the Rougarou was a cursed person as well who committed an act that they were forced to be cursed, and the curse of the Rougarou followed their bloodline. So the curse of the Rougarou and the curse of the Rougarou are the exact same thing. It's just a term that's used that's a mispronunciation of what it actually is, but it's the exact same thing. I can't ever say that I encountered a Rougarou, but I had heard tons of stories of people who would be out, gar fishing or alligator hunting. Oh, God. Okay, sidebar. I had to send somebody to Walmart today to buy chicken feet, to buy 18 packs of chicken feet for a ritual that I'm doing tomorrow night. You can buy chicken feet at Walmart if you didn't know that. They call them chicken paws in really big packs. And they had to go back and get me 18 packs of them out of the back cooler. Well, it was my son that picked them up, and they just stared really hard at him when he came there to get them for me. But I've got I've got some mojo that's it's gonna put the whammy down hard tomorrow night. It's gonna be pretty cool. I may or may not share that later. Okay, back to the Rougarou. See what y'all did to me. Chicken paws. Fuck. They would be in the woods at night, hunting gar fishing. Because you can hunt for gar fishing, and if nobody knows what a gar is, it's a fish. It's an air-breathing fish. It's got an elongated body, a very long mouth, and lots of teeth, and it will bite the ever-living fuck out of you. Why? I can say that with so much assurity because I've had the ever-living shit bitten out of me by an alligator gar from Louisiana before. Bit the fool out of my ass, and I didn't think it was going to let go. But they'd be in the woods hunting for alligators as well. And occasionally they'd go on raccoon hunts too, coon hunts in the drier parts of the swamp. But they would always come back with tales, especially on very foggy nights and very full moon nights, how they've seen these, what they thought at first were bears in the distance, watching them, almost with a human intelligence, watching them intently. I guess decide on whether or not they were something good to eat, and just exuding this aura of dread and fear coming from them. And it was a primal fear that they that they invoked in the observer and the hunters that were in the woods. And instead of taking shots at it, they would either turn their boat around or turn their ass around and get the fuck out as fast as they could. I swear I've heard hundreds of stories from hunters and people down there, leading me to believe that they're, you know, and they would come from older people, younger people, middle-aged people. They tell stories of what their grandparents had seen, which leads me to believe that there are probably several families under the curse of a Rougarou that live here in the deep south and in the swamps of Louisiana and in the swamps of the Mississippi that are out there hunting still. Occasionally, a hunter will disappear, a person or persons will disappear in the swamp, never to be heard of again. And the locals will say that the Rougarou got them. And I have a tendency to believe them, that the Rougarou did indeed get them. We'll pause there. Any questions, considerations, comments? All right, let's move on to the last, but not least, and quite possibly the most terrifying branch of werewolf that's out there. And that would be the Hex and Wolf, which of course translates to spell wolf. And I'm going to start off by just giving you a general idea of what a Hex and Wolf is. Hex and Wolf is a person who either made a deal with some otherworldly force, a deal with a witch, a deal with spirits unknown, or once human spirits or non-human spirits, that they requested power. And in return, they were given a token. And when I say token, it could be anything from a brooch, a ring, or a belt. And these tokens would give them the ability to assume the form of a giant wolf. And with that, I'm going to pause there and tell you the story, which some of you may or may not know, of, if I get his name right, please forgive me if I get it wrong, but you can look it up later if I get it wrong and tell me in the comments how fucked up that wrong I was. In Germany, towards the end of the Middle Ages, heading towards the end of the Middle Ages, in a town called Bedburg. Shit, you know, it's called Bedburg. It almost looks like it says spelled bedbug, but it's not. There lived a man named Paul Stoop. Paul Stoop, for 25 years, was a serial killer. They're not sure how many people he killed. They also counted animals at the time. You could be a serial killer if you killed animals, but it was mostly people that he killed. He was a serial killer. He was a cannibal. And he also committed various acts of incest. Big whoop, right? A serial killer who does all that. That doesn't surprise any of us. I mean, we've got the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world. We've got the Ed Geins of the world. But what made Paul Stoop not your garden variety serial killer or psychopath is that he was a Hex and Wolf. He was a spell wolf. And at the time of his capture, he was caught finally. He was arrested after 15 years of murder. At the time of his capture, after being tortured on the rack for days, he finally confessed that he'd been doing black magic since the age of 12, and that he had made a deal with the devil for power, and the devil gave him a belt. And when he put the belt on, he could assume the form of a great and mighty wolf. And as such, he went forth, and to the ones that he confessed to, he went forth as a wolf. Now, he could take the belt off and become human. He could put the belt on, and he would become a wolf. Any time of day, day or night, any day of the week, any time of the month. Did not have to be a full moon, didn't have to be a special holiday, nothing. He could be a wolf any time that he wanted to be. And he would go forth as a wolf, and he admitted now to killing at least 15 people. One actually being a child of one of his own sons when he was young. He claimed that he killed his own son and then devoured his son's brain as a wolf. And then as a wolf, he killed multiple pregnant women, removed their hearts and ate them, removed their fetuses and ate them. And he would refer to those as dainty little snacks. Yeah, he was a sick bastard. As a wolf, he had sexual intercourse with members of his family, including one of his daughters, multiple cousins, and several other distant relatives. Now, at the time, this being the Middle Ages and all, if it was any member of your blood, of your family, it was considered incest. Now, not only did he kill people, now this was 15 people that he admitted to killing. He also admitted to killing tons of livestock, cows, chickens, goats, pigs, you name it. As a wolf, he'd go forth, find them, and kill them and devour them. Not only did he do it at his village of Bedborg, he would actually travel between the towns around him. He would change his name. He would call himself, instead of Peter Stoop, he would call himself Peter Stubb or Piota Stubb. He would always change his name a little bit. He went by different aliases in different towns, where he would go and find his victims, especially when he was looking for women or children to eat. He would travel to these various towns, put on the belt, assume the form of a wolf, and kill them. Or in some cases, raping them and then eating them. And then taking the belt off and returning home back to his town, back to his home in his hometown of Bedborg. Until finally, now, at the time, because at the end of we were coming into at the end of the Middle Ages, there was it was the time that the witch purges were beginning, the witch hunts were beginning. But a lot of people don't realize, but at the same time that the witch persecutions were beginning across Europe, there was also another group that was being persecuted by the church at the time. And that were the ones that they considered to be werewolves. And we're talking about the Lycanthropes, we're talking about the Hex and Wolf, and we're talking about the Rougarou. They were the second most persecuted group, aside from witches, in Europe. And it ended up being the church that caught Peter Stoop at the time and brought him forth in front of the town elders and the sheriffs of the town, and forced him, at first he pretty much told them to go fuck themselves, that he didn't do anything wrong. But then he had members of his family that stepped forth and talked about that he would become a wolf and he would come into their bedroom at night and rape them at night. Or one of them paid witness to him bringing a child home in its jaws and sitting and at the dinner table, chewing the child to pieces and then devouring it at the dinner table. Now, on a side note, the family members who he admitted to having sex with, or the ones that confessed that he came in and quote unquote raped them as a wolf with, they were also put on trial as well. They were the victims, mind you, but it was still considered a crime. And if you participated in it willingly or unwillingly in this type of incest, you were still guilty, both in the eyes of the law and the eyes of the church. And as such, they would torture you and then kill you. So he lost not only did he bite it, but most of his family members who admitted to what he did to him also died as well, whether he ratted them out or they came forth and said what he did to them. But it took 15 days for him to finally admit to a portion of the crimes that he had committed. And that's after they broke him on the rack. And he told them about the great belt that was given to him by the devil, that the token that would allow him to become this great wolf with a desire to eat flesh, and how much he enjoyed doing it, that he would spend day after day, after he got done working the fields, he couldn't wait to go and put the belt on and go out and hunt a person or hunt a child or an animal and devour them. They assumed that he did a lot more killing, but those are the only ones that you get him to confess at the time. And after they got his confession, they took him out and they publicly chopped off his head, thus ending the life of poor Peter Stoop, the Hex and Wolf serial killer. Any questions about Peter Stoop? I know I abridged parts of his life. He was truly a sick bastard at that time. Oh, the church actually went to his home and looked for the belt, but they could not find the belt. It was believed that a member of his family had hidden the belt, and that members of his family that survived this whole inquest still had the belt, and that there were members of their family that continued to use the belt, and it was passed down from generation to generation. So there was always some sicko in Stoop's family that'd be out there that'd put the belt on and become a wolf and go out and commit acts of violence, rape, and cannibalism. Which brings us back to now, here in the United States. I had never met a Hex and Wolf, a spell wolf, somebody who had a token that was given to them or made for them to allow them to become this wolf, to assume this form of a wolf and go forth and do great evil. Because of all the stories I had heard, I had never heard of somebody who would put on a token to become a wolf, to go forth and become a superhero and do great deeds of good. They always put on the belt, the ring, the brooch, the necklace, to go forth to do acts of great evil with it. So in my eyes, there's no such thing as a victim in the world of the Hex and Wolf. The only victims are the ones that they make when they go forth and do the things that they do. But I have met several shadier members of my religion, which, if those who don't know, there is voodoo. I'm a priest, for those who don't know. I'm a Hungan. I am one of the good guys, if you could call me good. But on the other side of the serpent, on the shadow of the serpent, there's a darker breed of priest known as a Bakor. And Bakors are, as I found out in my faith, as I was learning the mysteries of my faith, Bakor, and I have met many Bakor, And I have seen these objects up close and personal that people who would come to them and request, you know, the powers of an animal for revenge or some such, that they would fashion tokens for them to give to them so they could go forth and do great evil and great bad. Um, and this is getting people to submit to the darker parts of their nature is the bread and butter of a Bakor. And they're there to provide the instruments to the downfall of any person who comes and seeks them out. Once you seek out a Bakor, you've pretty much condemned yourself and your spirit to a very, very dark afterlife. It won't be very pleasant for you when they do fast in this world. But once you seek them out, you're already condemned. Once you go looking for a Bakor, if you step into their shop, you've already stained your soul. You're toast. Damn bugs. Where the fuck these bugs are coming from? Yeah, I see bugs. I'm not high or anything, so y'all be quiet. But I have seen the tokens that allow people to shift. Not just as wolves, but it would allow them to shift into serpents, shift into jaguars, and other great cats, to go forth and do evil in this world, to spread evil within this world. And just to, wow, where did this hour go to, guys? Y'all should have stopped me. I've been babbling on and on and on here. But just to wrap everything up, when people talk about werewolves, I always smile because, and sometimes I'm a smart ass. I'll go, well, what kind are, which one? What kind are you talking about? Because as I found out in my studies and in some encounters, that there are those three distinct types of werewolf that exist, especially here in the New World, here in the United States. Again, they are very different from things that people love to talk about that are hot in culture right now, like the skinwalker. Which, by the way, a skinwalker, there are two types of skinwalker. There's the mortal skinwalker, and then there's the divine skinwalker. But I may do a show on that because I actually spent time on a reservation and found out way too much about that shit. Made me pee my pants. It was quite frightening, actually. But that's a tale for another day. um, the truth of the werewolf, yes, some of them are victims. Yes, some of them choose to be monsters. Yes, some of them are monsters. Yes, some of them are born with the potential of being monsters. Um, but overall, I don't fear them as much as I pity them, and their lot in life. Whether their lot is by choice, by action, or by circumstance. What was the question, dude? By the way, for those who don't know, Papa Joey, that's in the room. He's part of he's part of the Truth About Beer team. You guys should check out the website. And of course, we got a lot of good people here tonight. We've also got Super Horror Show, and if you don't go to, you really should go to his website and check out his animated stories. They're freaking amazing. They're a lot of fun. Oh, skinwalkers. Yeah, skinwalkers are a different breed of bad, completely different breed of bad. Now here in the mountains, we also have a shapeshifter that's in the woods. That growing up, we call it a ruck. Well, I was told it was called a ruck. That can appear to us if they're looking at us. You have to be looking straight on at it to see what you see. but they assume the form of something that's innocent, like a deer or a squirrel. But if you look around the side of them, they're actually a monster with teeth that will eat you. And I was growing up, and sometimes they assume the forms of people you trust or you like, um, that know your name. Yes, Super Horror Shows channel is fucking amazing. If you don't go there and check out his animations, he actually has an animated story with me involved in it. I'm just saying, it's pretty fucking cool. You should go check it out, Super Horror Show. But we have a scary shapeshifter here in the woods called a ruck that growing up I was always told to watch out for. That may, if I go spend an evening talking about the true mountain monsters that I grew up learning about with my family. I may do a show about that, and you'll learn more about the ruck. Yep, it's called Goblin House. It's a lot of fun, and it is clothing optional. It's a lot of fun. I don't wear a lot of clothing as the naked Bigfoot. But before I get too babbly, it's been about an hour, so let me thank everybody for showing up tonight. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach me on Twitter at VoodooMan3, also known as Mike the Naked Bigfoot. You can search that. If you follow me, I'll follow you. If you can DM me questions about tonight or leave comments or criticisms. You won't hurt a feeling. It just helps me grow and be able to tell you guys better stories on my channel. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Again, I'll let everyone know what the next topic will be. If you want to hear more about this topic, if there's something that you feel that I left out, let me know. I'm happy to go back and revisit any of my shows and do follow-ups and give more information. Guys, I've really enjoyed you. Thank you very much. Y'all have a great night. I'm fucking tired. I'm going to take my medication, finish taking my medications, and I'm going to go to bed. Until we meet again, Mike the Naked Bigfoot, guys. Peace.